Hello everyone, welcome to Commando Cast. I'm Andrew.
And I am Mike, and today we're going to talk about etiquette and clean play in gaming.
So today, Mike and I want to talk about etiquette and clean play in gaming. And of course, since we're a Destiny podcast, we're going to be using Destiny as our vehicle for that discussion. But a lot of what I think we're going to talk about today applies to other games that you may play as well, not just TCGs, CCGs.
Yeah, we want to be very clear. We're not here to boss anyone around or attack anyone. We're really trying to just establish a baseline for everyone to have a better time. We've actually wanted to do this for quite a while.
Right.
We like to foster new players, and when we bring in a new person to our gaming group, or in a new tournament, we like to teach them kind of the best practices for what they're doing. And given our current weekend's events, this seemed like a particularly relevant topic at the time.
Yeah, it seems to be a pretty hot topic in the community right now.
right.
So again, just to Mike's point, to back it up, at the last 2 weeks at Gongai, I've actually been having an etiquette discussion before, I should say a clean play discussion, before we kick off the tournament. So this is not sparred just entirely by one or two single events, right? This has been an ongoing discussion. So before we start, there was an article written it was just before Way of the Force came out. And it was written by I'll get the actual name here. It's written by, I guess it's just designer. I don't know, the name's in there somewhere, but it was written by one of the Destiny designers on rules to mill by. And he did a really good job in this article. It was like the forewarning of, here comes Millpocalypse. You guys just haven't found it yet, but here it comes, right? But so what he says, and I'll just read it and I'll put it up as well. But when two players sit across from each other to play a game, there's an implicit understanding that they intend to engage in a fun and challenging battles of wits. To these players, a good experience generally follows this set of unwritten rules. 1, both players are playing the same game. Right? If one player is playing to play chess while the other is playing checkers, the game will be mystifying to say the least. 2, and I think this is kind of where Mike and I were inspired to do this, right? Both players generally want the game to be fair and balanced enough that each player has a good chance of winning. For games like Destiny, the inclusion and element of chance also means that if a player loses a gun early in the game, they have a chance of making a comeback, which I think many of us enjoy about Destiny, right? And then 3, there should be interactivity about the game, and that was specifically in his discussion about Mill, which is not really where we're going. But 1 and 2 have, I think, a lot of relevance in there, right? You and I, when we sit down to play a game, whether it be casual or competitively, there's a social contract that I think, 1, we're going to treat each other with respect. So what does treating each other with respect mean? It doesn't just mean that I'm nice to you, right?
Correct. That is certainly is included.
Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. I think it's that we're, like he mentioned, we're going to be playing by the same set of rules.
Sure.
I think that the information that is considered to be knowledge that we both have is we both have access to it, and it is accurate. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Sure.
Is ensuring that information that is known about the current game state is accurate and can be. And because if it's not accurate, you can't make good decisions.
Correct. And
then I think if you can't make good decisions, you don't have the same chance to win, and that's part of that social contract, like he said, which is we both have an opportunity to win the game, and that's what makes it fun. I love losing close games. I love winning close games. I hate winning by a lot, and I hate losing by a lot.
Correct. On either side.
Right.
I agree, right? Because it doesn't feel bad to just blow somebody off the table.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that there are those out there who do enjoy that. But, get out of your mom's basement. Okay, so I think one of the, like what you hit on, I think is a really good intro point, which is everybody should have equal access to game state or what's going on, right? And one of the easiest ways you can do that is to keep a clean or organized play area, right? So what are some tricks that you employ not only to do that for your opponent, but to maybe help your opponent do that for you?
Okay, so first thing is I only put what is relevant to on my playmat, only things that are relevant to the actual game itself. Sure. I never place any resource tokens that are not in the game anywhere near my playmat. I have also started putting my resources in the same place every time. I also, if I bring a playmat where my resources are particularly hard to see because of the playmat I brought, I will point out to my opponent where my resources are and where they will be for the entirety of the game.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I agree. I mean, Destiny is somewhat unique, less so anymore with its tokens, right? But there can be a lot of tokens on the board in Star Wars Destiny.
Yeah.
And I think token management is probably my number one for me personally on organizing play. So, well, you know what? One of the tricks we use is, first off, not really a trick we should use, but under no circumstance should one ever stack tokens. Right, it becomes very specifically like on top of each other is what I mean. Right,
Yeah.
we've seen some people coming to Gongai lately who have been stacking their resource tokens in a stack. That is completely unacceptable in Destiny. Right, your opponent cannot, like, that is not, and it's not that you wouldn't tell them how many you had if they asked. That's not the point. But like, it should be just clear and open. Right, most people put their resources out in a line. Do not. There's no reason to stack your resources unless you're trying to just throw an extra crink in your opponent, and that's not fair play.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the main. I mean, I've heard people actually defend their poor game area, like their poor management of their game area, as it is an advantage to them because their opponent has to stop and think,
sure,
is that 2 or 3 resources? Oh, I thought that was 2. You had 3, and then your opponent, you know, you make a ill-advised decision based on bad information, and
sure,
and you're tilted.
And that's a fair argument, because it is an advantage. And what I guess my argument is that proper etiquette is such that that shouldn't be the case.
Correct. I would agree with you.
Yeah, and I think most, and that's why I say with the stacking of the tokens, I find it very hard to believe that you're not trying to throw your opponent off. And I feel that that's very dishonest. And if you're doing that as a core thing, I wonder what else you're doing, personally, to me.
Sure.
Another thing, so this game is very difficult to, or I shouldn't say it's very difficult, but Destiny, the source of the tokens, right? There's so many different token makers out there, right? There's Covenant, there's Laser Gaming, there's all sorts of them. Not to mention the fact that we've had 2 colors of 1s and 3s and shields, right?
Oh, don't forget the clear ones. Those are super fun.
Oh, the clear ones are awful. Awful. Especially from like trying to do a video commentary standpoint, the clear ones stink. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you, like, again, you might only have 1 set of red 5s, you might only have 1 set of black 5, or 1 set of black 1s, 1 set of red 1s. I get it. What I would ask people to do is not use multiple colors of tokens, multiple different types of tokens on the same character. Right? If you only have enough 1s that you can do the reds and the blacks on different characters, that's fine, but you should never have red 1s and black 1s or whatever on the same character at the same time. Right, that's just confusing. Your opponent loses track of them, especially with those black ones. Some cards, they just disappear.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, visually. So that's a big one for me. Now, how about where do you like to put your tokens, like your damage tokens and your shield tokens?
Yeah. So I've always been I place my damage tokens and shield tokens. I actually learned. I put them in front of my card. So like for me, it would be the top of my Han card will have my Han shields and Han damage on that. Especially considering we've kind of come a long way with our dice rolling. Like we have these play tables now that have like a trench to roll dice in. Right. So there's less chance for me to hit those tokens like with my rolls.
Well, but I mean, even if you don't, there's no less chance of hitting it up there versus having the die hit it off your card.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's where I've always put mine. And I like that because I like to know how much damage my opponent has. And I've seen it before where my opponent has placed damage on their character and then put their used dice in front of the damage. Right. And then I have to reach over and look like a fiddly person and look and put it back, and I have to ask them, and I don't like that. So
yeah, I agree. I do the same thing. I also, with my dice, I try to use my unrolled die. I try to put my unrolled dice actually on the side of my character so that my opponent can still see, because there's a lot of times where you're like, oh, how many health does that guy have? Question that gets asked a lot, right? So if you've got 5 tokens and 3 dice on top of your character, and all of a sudden you're moving it off, I think you just keep it open. I do tend to, when I resolve the dice, I bring it back on the character when the character is exhausted, just to make it clear.
Yeah. And I believe the rules of the game state that your dice should be placed on the card that they're that they're attached to.
Yeah, that's most people just leave them on the character, and that's perfectly acceptable.
I've kind of learned. I've started doing that a little bit more as well, just because I play a lot of Tabletop Simulator, and people place their dice on the side because you don't want to grab your card with the stupid hand at the same time. So yeah, no, I think that's a fine practice to kind of bring them out. And another thing too, place your dice that are in the dice pool. In the dice pool, like not we have some players that they will roll in a support that is off and behind their characters. They'll roll that dice and then place it in front of, but not on the card of the support, and it's very easy to lose track of, and that it's there. Like I know we have some players that are visually impaired, and that to them is easier for them to do. So I obviously make some concessions for that, but I do think having all of your dice easily identifiable in the dice pool, like if they are not in the pool, they need to be clearly identified as not being in the pool.
Yeah, and that brings up another point, especially with TIE fighters, are a perfect example, right? Like sometimes your board can become very crowded with 4 TIE fighters on the board, right? And it does become very difficult to track which die belongs to which TIE, which you should, of course, be making that effort. So you just need to, I think, you just maybe even have the conversation with opponents, like, hey, this is how I'm going to do this, or how do you want me to do this, or whatever, right? Because I could also see the argument in that case of, say you have your ties in a set of 4, right? 2 in the front, 2 in the back. I could see the case there of having just the rolled die on top of each tie. I agree with you, but you know, if you think about if you're lining up 4 ties, you start drawing lines, right? So, okay, so fair enough. And then I think the last thing that I think both Mike and I agree on, right? We do have some players, they have this huge bag of tokens they've gotten over their entire career of playing whatever. And they sit down at the table and go, right? And that goes back to Mike's point of, you know, don't have anything on your play mat that's not supposed to be there. Right. Yeah. So that, you know, if that's how you need to do it, I don't understand why you can't go get like a $2 tackle box and like just sort things up. But
and I will say too, as I've started collecting this awesome amount of tokens and third party, and the Hyperloop sent me like an override, you know, token and a power action token, which was really sweet. As I've started to collect these things over the last 2 years of this game, I had to consciously go, you know what, I'm only going to play with these 20 tokens.
Sure.
Like, because what I found was, and if you've ever seen me play, sometimes I'll forget to pull my power action tokens, and I only have 3 in my haystack of 60. So I'm like, and that's so annoying. Like you're, and especially if you're on a timer, like in a tournament, like that can be. So, you know, try to get your tokens down to a manageable amount. Yeah. Like, don't bring a bunch of extra stuff.
I completely agree. And I myself, I don't have power action tokens, so we use other, like some of them are more obvious, but once you start getting like 3 or 4 different power actions out there, it becomes harder, right? So, okay, fair enough. So that's tokens. What else? Oh, a big one that you taught me actually was the easy assigning of indirect damage. So can you bring that one up?
Yeah. So indirect damage is. I assume I'm speaking to a Destiny group. So indirect damage is to be assigned 1 step and then applied as a single step. Correct. So what I see a lot of times is, and this we had to do a lot of this in the Thrawn Snoke meta. So someone would do an obscene amount of indirect, like 7 indirect damage, right? And I've got 3 characters, and my guys are at like 2 hit points and 4 hit points and 6 hit points, and then they start counting off their indirect damage, like, okay, I'm gonna add 1, and then I'm gonna flip this to the 3, and then they were like, oh, wait a minute, no, I don't want to assign it that way, and they would go back, and it was very easy for people to accidentally misassign damage.
Yeah, I believe it 95% of the time was accidental, right? And but you'd have
there's also a chance for tomfoolery and people cheating with that. So what I started trying to get my teammates to do is, since we have all these tokens, right? If I do 3 indirect to you, do not place the damage that you receive on your character until it is assigned. So what we did is we took our 3 damage and we would place it in front of, but away from other damage in front of each character, and then we could manipulate it to figure out what was going to work best for us, and then we would be like, done, and then we'd take that damage and we'd slide it back to the character pool, and then you taught me the same way is not to color up your
not to trade up
not to trade up your tokens until that is done, because if you don't do it that way, it becomes very difficult to adjust in the middle of a process. So I think that's I think that's really easy for everyone to do, and it will decrease confusion.
Yeah, I think it works better both ways for both players, but certainly you don't want to be caught not having assigned damage correctly, whether intentional or not.
Yeah, and I've been playing the Tarkin Snoke deck, which is all indirect, right? So one of the things, I actually kind of treat that deck almost as I'm counting mill cards. Like mill players are counting cards in deck. I'm actually counting total health, and that's one of the ways that I've had to keep, making sure that people are accurately assigning their indirect. Is like, okay, I need 14 to kill you. Okay, you've assigned it. I know I just did 5. You should be at 9, right? And then you're at 10. Something went wrong, right? So.
Yeah, but even then, it becomes very hard to go back and track, especially if they have multiple characters. Well, he had 1, he had 3, and he had 2, right? I mean, that becomes very hard. So yeah, I think your method of just laying the damage out and then moving it in is good etiquette.
Sure.
Right? All right, another one we wanted to talk about is have a good attitude. And there's a lot that comes with this, right? I mean, I'm, again, dog in the fight. I always like to, say what I have my own personal agenda, right? But I'm not saying that you have to never get salty. It happens to all of us. It's happened to all of us, right? But when Mike and I sit down, there's an agreement that I'm going to treat him with respect, and he's going to treat me with respect. Now that doesn't mean he can't get upset, but if you roll all blanks, it's very easy to get frustrated. But under no circumstances should you. I mean, we're all adults here, or close to adults, right? Or young adults, or whatever you want to say, right? There's really no excuse for shouting out loud such that everybody in the room can hear that you're frustrated.
Yeah, that's probably an extreme case.
Or stuff like that, or just go or whatever. It's let's keep it under control. And that doesn't mean you can't roll in and be like, oh, right? It happens.
I think any emotional outburst you make detracts from the fun that your opponent is having. Sure. The worse the emotional outburst is, the more of a detraction from their fun that it ends up being at the end. So I think as low as we can keep that, the better. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if you made a great play, if I were to intentionally, even though it killed me, be like, wow, that was a really good play, that actually increases your fun, right? So it's a weird, the way you can either choose to take away from your opponent's enjoyment, or you can give them more enjoyment. And I think when you and I play, I feel like we're trying to make each other enjoy the game as much as possible. It isn't always going to happen. No one likes to get bombed on.
If you roll blanks over and over and over again, it stinks. And we're not, again, everybody gets salty. Everybody has bad days. We're accounting for we understand.
Yeah,
that, right?
and I think you've mentioned before,
we've all been there.
It doesn't always have to be an emotional outburst either. It can be a little passive aggressive. You've mentioned before that you when the game is over, if your opponent then laments well, if I had just done this, I could have done this.
Right. You hit that's actually one of my pet peeves, right? So there's been several. I mean, many a game in the past, right? Not even with one particular individual, right? But that person would be like, oh man, if I had just rolled the 2 instead of the blank 3 turns ago. And you're like, yeah, but you don't understand. The decision tree at that point changes. Or if you had played this card instead of that card, for you to assume that I would have made every decision for the rest of the game the same is just plain out wrong.
And right? You're taking the credit away from your opponent who beat you and played a good game.
Right.
By doing that, when you're like, oh, I just got bad card draws, or the Your Destiny guys, they had a podcast months and months ago, and they talked about that. I think it was during the Sabine and Ezra meta, and they spoke about how, I got rolled off the table, Sabine doing Sabine things, right? And they basically called BS on that. They were just not having that. They're like, you can't, you got to control what you can control, but don't take your opponent's credit and joy away from a game well played. And I think in short, the way I could probably sum it up is, if you get beat, say good game and shut up.
Right.
Talk about how great your opponent's deck is. Talk about some plays they made.
You can always pack up and get up and leave. right? Like,
Right.
and that actually brings up another pet peeve of mine, right? Which is on the flip side, like if I just beat you, or if I just destroy you, right? Like, I don't need to do a recap there in front of you with you on why I beat you.
So true. Yes.
Right. Like.
Yes.
We can talk about something like, yeah, this was really... And if your opponent's engaging and they want to talk about the game,
sure.
that's completely different,
right?
But like if your opponent's packing up or like they're there and they're maybe talking about other stuff or looking around what's going on, like you don't need to sit there and be like, man, this Qui-Gon Yoda is really great because, like, right. Dude, like, all right, we get it.
You won.
You got me.
You got me.
High five.
Right, yeah.
We shook on it.
GG.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, it is, right? It's like you have to sit there, like, not only just get your butt kicked, but like then you have to have a play-by-play while the other person tells you about how much more amazing they are than you, right?
I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I am a little loud at times. And I'm actually very loud when we play Destiny. I enjoy the game so much that it's really hard for me sometimes to not chat people from across the room, like, about what game they played or the play that they made. And I actually caught myself this week. I believe that I announced how much damage I did and then made pew pew noises across the room. Like, and I might have got caught on a recording. I don't know. But again, I wasn't thinking, and I mean, at the time it seemed really funny, but it may not have felt the person that I pew-pewed right. that game. So, none of us are innocent of all charges on this stuff. But, certainly I think if you just fall back to, am I enhancing the fun for my opponent and the life of this game through my actions?
Sure. Or are you probably more important? Like, I mean, there's no social contract that, like, you have to go out of your way to make them have a better time, right? That's not what we're saying, but we are saying that you have to actually put in effort to additionally detract from their game. So don't do that. Like, yeah. It's not that you have to do things to not be rude.
Right.
Like, you actually have to take action to be rude. So I guess that's my argument, is just don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you beat them and you destroy them or whatever, like, there's no requirement that you have to put in action to make them feel better. Maybe you should, part of being a good human being, whatever. Or if you're getting beat, there's nothing saying that, like, you have to increase their value or their enjoyment.
Sure.
But you can not take actions to detract from it.
Yeah, it's the old standby, like, when in doubt, D-bad. Don't be, whatever D word of your choice. Like, I mean, like, it's very simple. Like, don't do it.
Yeah. Fair enough. So, I think that, have a good attitude. It helps everybody. And honestly, like, I can tell you, like, the times that I've gotten salty, I've ended up feeling bad about it later. So, like, you actually, just by doing that, decrease from your own enjoyment more.
Yeah.
Right? So, just don't do it, right? I mean...
It's funny you bring that up, because I don't know if any of my Transformer brothers watch this cast, but poor Tim felt the brunt of my most salty moment, like, during Transformers. Like, I was trying to understand the game, and he just murdered me. And I remember, I mean, I straight up had a man fit. Like, if like, the only thing kept me from a 100% man fit was I wasn't laying on the floor. That was the only, but I was so mad. I was just like, this game is stupid. I was so mad, and I immediately caught myself, and I remember apologizing. I'm sorry, you got the brunt of that, bro. And he was very cool about it, but it can't feel real. Like you said, it's so, when you're like that and you catch yourself, it feels so bad, and like that, Luckily, I was able to apologize, and he kind of forgave me. So
yeah. And then one last thing, and again, like I said, I always disclose the dog in the fight, right? This has been happening a lot at the Gongai tournaments I've been running lately, right? But we have a lot of new players in the area, which is great, and I would be doing the same thing as many of these players, which is they're coming in this point and they're only buying Legacy's block, right? Which makes a ton of sense. It's about to rotate out. There's no reason to sink a bunch of money into that block, maybe buy a couple singles or whatever. But where I'm going with this is that's a decision that you as an adult have made, is to only buy Legacy's block. And again, I agree, I'd be doing the same thing, but I would not be coming to a standard tournament and then complaining while at that standard tournament that I only have these cards while everybody else has other cards, right? So again, I 100% understand only buying the white boxes and not buying the black boxes. but no one's forcing you to get out of bed in the morning, come to a standard tournament, pay the entry fee, and then sit there and play only. Like no one's forcing you to only do that. So it's a decision that you've made. So be an adult and deal with it. And when you lose, don't make your other person feel like the only reason that they won was because you're at a disadvantage with the cards, because that's a decision that you made.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel that fits back into what we already talked about, right? But again, this is and be an adult about it, right? Mm-hmm. And then furthermore on that, if you've decided to only play Legacies block, that doesn't mean that I understand that doesn't mean you necessarily have cards, but it doesn't mean that you can't still know that other cards exist in the world, right? I had an incident this last weekend, and this was a salty moment that I felt bad about. Mm-hmm. But I played He Doesn't Like You. And the opponent goes, well, what's that? I don't know what that is. And I'm like, really? Like, this card? So, and then I immediately just, all right, fine, whatever. And again, I felt bad about it. It was like, He Doesn't Like You is like a fundamental yellow villain card. Right. If you haven't seen that card, we need to have a chat.
Yeah, right? when they find evidence of our game in a million years, they will find remnants of this card carved on walls. Like it is a seminal card of this game.
And I perfectly there's cards like Force Illusion. Like I perfectly there's a lot of people who have hated that card since it was printed, and like that one's slightly different. But like with He Doesn't Like You or other cards like that, like just because it's in black doesn't mean that you have to shut your mind off to its existence in the world, right? So again, rant over. Like I'm saying, just be an adult in the room, right? You are making certain decisions, and I'm not just talking about what I was talking about anymore, right? But you're an adult. You've agreed to come and play a game, just like you talk about. Mm-hmm. We sat down with each other. We had an agreement, an unwritten agreement to be adults. Be an adult.
Sure.
Right? All right. So you had wanted to talk about one last thing before we get out of here.
So cheating.
Right.
So we are just a couple days post the San Diego regional, and there was some dirty cheating happening at this tournament on stream, and I would just like to say that this is not acceptable, and we should not be making excuses for cheating. Mm-hmm. This is not a money game. Like, we're not playing for $10,000. And I would go, my morality says that you wouldn't cheat in that anyway, but I know some people are pushed more towards cheating, but
the natural human tendency would be to skew more towards that it's a risk-reward trade-off, right? It's an economics problem.
Correct. Right? So I just feel like if you feel the need to cheat your friends, which is where we are in this game. Mm-hmm. This game is we do not have a giant player base. Like, the people that we play with, 85% of them I consider at least a good acquaintance, if not a friend. Mm-hmm. Like someone I would give a ride to, or let someone borrow cards. So if you cheat in that sort of setting, you are a bad person, and I don't want to play with you. And I think I need to call it out because it's so bad. And if you are so brash to do it on stream, I have a feeling that you're cheating in all other aspects of your play, like when it's not on camera. So I don't want to bang this poor guy into the ground. This poor guy, I don't have any sympathy for him, but I feel bad for his playmates, his people that are in his play group, and the people that traveled to San Diego and didn't make top cut because this person decided to stack cards on top of his deck and then not let his opponents cut his deck. So
yeah, well, I'm not making excuses at all, right? But everyone does have the responsibility. Both sides of the table need to maintain that fair environment, right? And I find it very hard to believe that had the person asked to cut, it wouldn't have been offered.
Sure.
Right. Now, I'm not making excuses. Sure. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just,
So I would say,
unfortunately, both players have to maintain game state.
To feed into our etiquette discussion, part of etiquette is going to be to randomize your opponent's deck after they have done so. Mm-hmm. Daniel's part of our play group. Like Daniel's, I consider a good friend of mine. Like we play DDR together after Monday nights. We chat all week long about deck strategy. And this guy, when he picks up my deck on a Monday night, you could tell he's played Magic for the last 15 years because he takes my deck and he goes. I mean, he's not playing around, like, because it's become part of his routine, and because he had to, because he comes from a game where cheating is just like breathing for a lot of people. Right. So I will be adopting that going forward. Like,
certainly, yeah. I mean, and at the very least, like, I don't know many games where the cut isn't offered even without asking. Or at least in our area, right? So,
I mean, when you and I sit down and play, like right here at your kitchen table, like I'm not gonna. I mean, you're like, and I'm like, because we don't even care. Like at that point, like if you, I guess whatever. If you need to start with this,
well, and you'll notice that a lot of times I'll do my shuffle. Like I know we're not going to do it, and I'll do my shuffle, and I'll just cut it in the middle of the board anyway, right?
Yeah.
But that's just because I've stacked it perfectly, and I know exactly where the cut is.
So don't be a cheater. That's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry.
So anyway, this is the Etiquette and Clean Play episode. Again, there's a lot of really small steps that we as players can take to make the game more enjoyable, not just on a personal level, but just easier to play, right?
And to teach.
And to teach, right? Well, I mean, yeah, if you're doing teaching, then obviously you're talking through moving slower and doing all that, right? But it helps the phase 2 learning, for sure, right? Clean and organized board play is number 1, right? You owe your opponent access to the same information that you have, barring like your hand, like besides the obvious stuff, you and the opponent, if it's equal game state, have equal access to it, and you need to go out of your way to ensure that is equal, both ways, right? So, do you have anything else you want to add? I think pretty much clear on this one, but I really hope that people walk away from this changing their habits if they've realized, if something that we spoke about rings to them. I hope that can add value and they can work around it.
Well said, sir.
So, do you have anything else?
Go Commando.
Go Commando.